St. Hilaire.
So welcome to the English Language Learning Strategies for Success. I'm glad that you guys are here. Thanks for taking time on your Saturday. And like I said, I'm Rebecca Schroeder, the ENL teacher at Hamilton Southeastern High School.
And I'm Rhonda St. Hilaire, the ENL IA at HSC High School.
So during this presentation, some things we're going to cover is who we are and a little bit of our background, a little bit about how Hamilton Southeastern's ENL department works and what it entails. Some things we've learned in our 5 years working together, understanding ENL's students' experiences, some problems that we encounter during certain classes and coursework, and some of the solutions that have helped and supported our students throughout our 5 years of working here, and then some time for reflection and if you guys have any questions. So a little bit about me. I was raised in Ellettsville, Indiana, and I attended the University of Southern Indiana for my undergrad and got my master's at Butler University. I've been married to my husband, Jeremiah, for 14 years. And we have 2 daughters, Claire and Morgan. Claire is 9 and Morgan's 8. I taught science at Lawrence Central and Bloomington High School South, and actually in Houston, Texas for 13 years. And now I'm teaching ENL here at Hamilton Southeastern for this is our 5th year. After college, I've lived in Florida, Georgia, Texas, and Mexico. And that's a little bit about me as my background.
And about me, now you've heard the accent, so you know that I'm not from the United States. I'm actually from Trinidad and Tobago, a lovely tropical island in the Caribbean, just off the South American mainland, very close to Venezuela. I've been married to Roger, my husband, for the last 27 years, and I have 3 young adult ladies, aged 24, 22, and 21. My 21-year-old is a special needs student of the HSC High School where I teach, and where I help with the ENL department. I taught Spanish, French, and English at high school level in Trinidad for 14 years. And of those 14 years, 6 of them, I was a dean of discipline. I left the education sector in 2007, and I pursued careers in customer service management and procurement. And I migrated to the US just in August of 2014. So I've just been here for 7 years, and I've been working at HSC High School for almost 5 years.
So a little bit about how Hamilton Southeastern's ENL department works. There's 4 professionals that work in the ENL group, myself and Rhonda, and then we have another lady who pushes into classrooms and a final professional who works with teaching the world language levels 3s and 4s. In my sheltered classes, there's 57 students, but with my co-taught and the other students that I'm monitoring, we have a caseload of 82 language learners, and I work with 112 teachers supporting them in the other content areas also. So here's just kind of like a rundown to-do list of kind of, if you've never been an ENL teacher, and like I said, I joined 5 years ago, just some things that go with running an ENL department and some things that you do throughout the year. So 1, I teach my own classes, and I also co-teach with other classes, helping students that are a little bit more advanced in their English proficiency and trying to get them out into the co-teaching setting. I have to administer tests anytime someone comes in. We give them a WIDA screener. We make sure to see where their levels are. And about in January, February, they have to take the WIDA levels again. And I give all those tests. And anytime there's a test, an I-STEP, a SAT that students need support, they come through me and I administer all these tests. Rhonda takes care of the quizzes and exams for the students. She runs our testing center. And so that if they need the extended time, our levels 1s and 2s, which means beginner. 5 means the ENL is proficient. So our beginner 1s and 2s take all their quizzes with Rhonda to make sure they get their supports and their accommodations. And then Rhonda also does a nice job looking at their grades every week or 2 and making sure we stay up on getting their credits. and assisting the teachers who, the kids, they might not be passing that course. We draft what's called an ILP, an individual language plan, and making sure where their levels are, because in English teaching, there's 4 domains, right? How well do they read in English, listen, speak, and write? And typically what you're going to see with an ENL student, they're higher on the input part of the language, the listening and the reading, and then they need a little bit more assistance with the speaking and writing. That's just part of the ILP drafting. Again, advocating, champion, making sure that the kids get what they need in each individual class, and each individual, they're met with how we can help them as their advocates in the building. And again, just checking their learning needs and translation. Like if a parent needs to come in, or if there's something, a meeting that needs to happen, then we're in charge of making sure we have the proper translation of paperwork, of meetings, of just anything that the parents might need translation for also. And then coaching other teachers, coaching the kids, mentoring teachers, mentoring kids, and just making sure that we get best practice out there. Like I said, I have 112 teachers, and so we're constantly meeting, communicating, making sure we have the documents that if we need to translate them, if you know, whatever the course teacher needs also. And I work with the counseling office for just making sure the credits, because when they move in from another country, that we know which coursework to put them in, what classes to give them credit for already, and getting them to the right place. And then providing them guidance with their immigration matters. And Rhonda's going to do more speaking to kind of what that looks like, because like she said, she migrated here in 2014. So she has a wealth of knowledge on some things that as you migrate and immigrate, what you might need to be successful. Something we've learned over the 5 years is like some things to help our classroom management, if you are working with ENL students, to help them be successful. Because we have here at HSE, we have 17 different languages and a variety of cultures and countries represented in our 82 students. And so obviously, if you attended the Brain and Culture, they talk about how different cultures are individualistic versus cooperative. And so we have a wide variety of like cultural needs and the backgrounds they come from. So it's very important that the management of our classroom really supports the learning for all backgrounds. So just knowing your student and having, and as you saw with Rhonda, she has that background of being a dean. So just having some discipline really helps them feel safe and ready to succeed. Because like our second point said, identifying these cultural cliques that can turn into making sure we break down that it's not, you're from this place and you only speak this language, so you only communicate with the people that are like you. We give time for that. But what we did see is if they did too much of that, their language actually went backwards. So we just make sure that we're cognitive of allowing them time to speak in their L1 and work with kids from their country, but encouraging them to meet other cultures. Because what we noticed is when they broke those boundaries, they actually improved in English because that was their common language, and they would improve in feeling connected to the classroom, to the school. It improves greatly if you can identify who they're comfortable with, give them that time, but also kind of push them to be, into other groups.
And I will interject here talking about cliques. What we discovered in our first 2 years is that we had the Latino students were very loud, and they would tend to form their little cliques and overpower the space. And one of our Asian students was just speaking with us from her heart and was saying that she didn't feel safe in the environment because, it was intimidating for her and other Asian students to, feel that they can be themselves and, have their own little, their own part of the classroom. So because the Latinos was so overwhelming. And we sat and we spoke about that, and we really made it an intentional objective to ensure that we get that cross-cultural integration and not have one set of students taking over the space more than the others.
Yes. And so that was critical to our growth in the last 5 years. Another thing that we've noticed is that finding the behaviors that will negatively impact their academic and future success as adults, we've been really targeting, because sometimes, there's different kids who will come in and they have, what could be considered, you might feel sad, or you might feel like, oh, a lot of empathy for that student situation, but allowing that empathy to not work against you, but to help them push into the future success that we see, and speak it out in their life that we want them to be the best. Because I think, for example, we had a student, we have two separate situations. One student came to us and we allowed her to, just be really loud, be over dramatic, because we thought, oh, she's dealing with all these cultural changes. And we didn't really address those early. And so by her senior year, it had kind of grown into this unmanageable personality trait. Well, on the flip side, we had another student who kind of came to us with the similar personality, and we spoke to her, and through her freshman year, really tried to modify that behavior. And then sophomore year, she came back and was mature, and we got to celebrate with her and her growth. And they do respond well to us when we take the time to address that behavior and realize, oh, they do this because they care and they want us to be better. Again, same thing with a couple boys. One had anger issues because of some of the things going on with his family life. And instead of allowing that to overtake our space, we allowed him to talk in a separate room, explained what we were trying to do to help him. And now he's a thriving senior who is doing amazing things. And one of his other friends who was doing similar situations is now one of our best seniors who works with the underclassmen, and trying to explain that our heart is to only make them better. So I really would say that let them vent on some of their empathetic situations, but noticing that we do really want the best for their future and help them hone in on those skills. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that covers everything.
Okay. And again, if you guys have any questions, you can always put it in the chat and let us know if there's something you want us to elaborate on, or something you might want to ask. And I think I already spoke to just cross-cultural groups and making sure, because that does actually improve English. So if you work in a building similar to ours where there's so many cultures, it's really, they benefit and they become stronger students and better people once they learn from other cultures. And this one is something we've learned in the last couple of years, is that their WIDA scores don't always reflect their ability and potential. We've had students who do not do well on the test because they want to stay in the ENL program. And so we try to address that and say, although on the test it says you're a 2, we'll talk to their teachers and we treat them to the ability that we really know that they can do. And so it typically works on the students who did not perform well on that one snapshot of who they are, and not limiting them to that. Now, legally, they have the document that will support that, but we also make sure that we push them to the level that we know they truly are.
And we have seen some successes. I mean, the majority of students do well in those classes that we push them to do, and they come back later and they thank us for getting them into that space of just pushing those boundaries of their English language proficiency.
Yes, and being open to the teachers really appreciate having them in their room too. And like I shared, I co-teach 4 classes, and we've really seen some wild success with that, because not only is it teaching the other teachers how to interact, and I'm able to support them in their thoughts about their content and how they're presenting material, but it's also our students are feeling more successful, and just the I guess, the confidence.
Mhm.
It's really helping with their confidence and having me in there. And so that's been something we've found success doing. And as Rhonda just mentioned, pushing, a lot of our kids have tried some advanced courses, some AP courses, and by getting them support, by getting them the things they need for their accommodations, again, they come back thanking us and feeling good about themselves and getting into the colleges and the universities that they want to do.
And I want to just bring an example. We had a student that came in from Kuwait in his sophomore year. He came in with very low English proficiency, and his desire is to be a medical doctor, cardiothoracic surgeon. And within 1 year, he was able to test out of the WIDA. And because he had been pushing himself to do advanced courses, and right now he's doing about 4 advanced courses, and he has a GPA of 4.01 at this time. You know, for someone just coming in now learning English and being able to have that kind of success so quickly and consistently is, you know, testimony to that strategy being a successful strategy in getting our kids to push the limits, that the English language proficiency is not something that they should use as a crutch to disable promise and potential, but use it as a way to make you stronger and more, you know, aggressive in your pursuit of your courses and of your future goals and dreams.
Yes, definitely. And I think, again, that goes with, and I'm sure all of you on here, it's very much the assets mindset that they bring so much, and that pushing them and explaining to them that how great they are and the strengths that they have, and to celebrate those. I think that helps them as an individual continue to push themselves in a positive way. So these are all some of the strategies that we've learned over the last 5 years that have made our ENL program, our ENL kids, stronger. So again, ask us any questions. If you have thoughts, just let us know.
All right, so I'll take you now into understanding more of the ENL students' experience. As mentioned before, I am very new to the United States, being only here for 7 years. And as we sat and have been examining, well, my experience and the experience of our kids, we came up with these as the hot button issues that immigrants face when coming to the United States for the first time. The first thing, of course, weather and climate. Now, you come from, like in Trinidad, our standard weather pattern is rainy season, dry season, probably a consistent temperature of about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and we don't use Fahrenheit, we use Celsius. So that's another thing that you come into. How do you, you know, equate the Celsius and the Fahrenheit? And I still use Celsius. I still can't get my mind around Fahrenheit. So the kids come and they're greeted with winter and fall and, you know, these freezing temperatures. I remember our first year here as a family, we bought some of the worst winter gear imaginable. We didn't know what we were looking for. We just said, okay, coats, scarves, hat, but, you know, the quality of those things, we only have learned within, you know, the last 5-6 years with some of these brutal winters that, yeah, you have to put out some money to buy quality stuff to deal with the weather. And the changes each, you know, to have to be changing a weather pattern every 3 months. It's a new thing as well. The year goes by so much more quickly when you have to deal with seasons rather than rain one day and sun the next. So, you know, being sensitive to that kids are adjusting to, their bodies are adjusting to the climate. Sometimes, you know, you have skin issues that come up as a result, you know, having to deal with the cold and the you know, your hands getting brittle and, you know, your skin drying out. We're not used to that in most of these tropical and subtropical countries. The food, major issue, food. It took me about, I would say about 3 years to be able to find the kind of spices and seasonings and food that I had grown accustomed to living for my first 40 years in Trinidad. And I mean, especially our East Indian children, they have the most struggles, I would think, them and the Asians tend to have the most struggles in trying to get out your bodies to be accustomed to American food. In Trinidad, we use a lot of what we call ground provision, which is stuff that is, you know, we eat roots like potatoes and, but I will call some names that you may not be familiar with, but that's the thing on the top of my mind. Eddos, sweet potatoes, those are the things that we grew up and our palate is accustomed to that. And when we come here, to kind of basically turn your palate upside down and to try to find things that you're familiar with. And we have some kids here, when they go to the cafeteria, they're saying, you know, we can't eat the food. We don't feel good when we eat the food. Up to yesterday, one of our students, she told me, Mrs. H, they called me Mrs. H and they called her Mrs. S. I ate a salad and I don't know if it tasted like a salad. I said, okay, well, I'm sorry, but that's what we're dealing with the United States. You know, maybe you need to bring your own salad and make sure that you're comfortable with eating, you know, at lunchtime. And, you know, there's serious sometimes digestion issues that they have to deal with, and sometimes being in classrooms and they feel kind of, you know, hesitant to ask for permission to go to the restroom. And it may be because their body is fighting against this food that they're not accustomed to. So, you know, being sensitive to that and allowing students who have just come here to have that, you know, that privilege to try to acclimate. The culture, a major difference with culture. In the Caribbean islands especially, and a lot of African countries, manners is a very important thing. And when I came here and I would walk the hallways and I would say good morning, because that's what we do. We enter any room, you always say good morning, good afternoon, you greet people. And you say that here and everybody looks at you and they don't take you on, they don't even answer. And I was like, okay, you know, and that was something that I had to get used to. It was difficult. It still is difficult because that's something that's ingrained in me. And a lot of students as well, they are cultured with that respect for authority figures. You know, we have students that tell us that where they came from in a classroom setting, to say that you want to say something in the classroom, this is in Russia, you have to do this, raise your hand like that. And that's only when you'll be allowed to speak. You know, but here in the classroom dynamics is a very different situation. So that culture, the American, you know, a lot of freedom, a lot of ways you can express yourself. It's not necessarily what pertains to our culture back where we may have come from. We don't have that kind of freedom. And getting acclimated is another, I mean, it has taken me it took me about 2 years to really acclimate to what is expected of me here and fitting into the society as it is. Another concern is healthcare and health insurance. A lot of new immigrant families cannot afford health insurance. So what we have done, we have a list of free clinics that we let our students know that they can visit if they have any health concerns or issues. Being able to understand that, you know, the way that the healthcare works here is so much more intentional than where we would have come from. I have gotten some of the best healthcare here compared to what I've gotten back in Trinidad. And, you know, with the testing, you know, being proactive about your health is not something that I grew up understanding. You know, going to a doctor, the first sign of anything that goes wrong. That is not a cultural thing in a lot of countries. So you'll find students very resistant to seeing a professional for mental health issues, for physical issues, and that will extend, of course, their parents would not want to cooperate with that sort of thing, you know, so being sensitive to that as well. Race categorization and ethnic issues. I have only been Black for 7 years. I've always said that. Prior to coming here, all I was Trinidadian. And when you come here and you have to basically fall into a category, it shakes you a bit because, you know, you're saying, but, you know, we are not, that is not how you're just born in a country and that is who you are. But here, you are, as we all know, everybody, you know, is put into different categories and delineations and so on. So that could be a lot to get used to. Clothing, as I touched upon with the weather, being able to, you know, dress appropriately for the different seasons. And sometimes it clashes with some cultures, like sometimes the more conservative cultures, they may not want their kids to be dressed as how American kids may dress to come to school. So that's a little tension there that can happen in the home where the kids seeing everybody else dressing a certain way, and because of their culture at home, their parents might have a little issue. So that may cause some tension and some stress. Language, accent, vocabulary, expressions. A lot of things Americans say is very different to how we say it, especially countries that have a British influence, like Trinidad. We have a very British way of being taught English. So there's certain expressions and terms that we, like trash can, we don't say trash can, we say dustbin. You know, we don't say sidewalk, we say pavement. So a little getting used to those terminologies coming here and even understanding the American accent could be a challenge. Sometimes kids have a problem understanding teachers because they're speaking so quickly. Even though they're speaking English, it is just the accent can be a little difficult to follow. So being aware of that. Immigration issues, students have different immigration statuses. For my family and I, the green card was our way, but we got here, we got the green card via lottery. But some students are here, business visas, refugee status. So, being able to understand the different nuances of people's immigration status so that you can advise them, point them in the right direction to get resources to help with their situations. Mm-hmm. The education system as well, extremely different classes. Back home, the teacher is king. Mm. Here, the students are king. Mm. And it is basically flipped. So in Trinidad, we were accustomed to being very hierarchical. So when I enter the room, I expect students to stand and say good morning. Mm. You enter a room here, students don't take you on. You just, you have to get used to that. And students, they from those countries like mine, they are more intimidated by teachers. So they're not as willing to approach a teacher to ask a question or to get extra help. And understanding that to being more proactive and reaching out to the student if you realize that they're struggling, because they may not necessarily feel comfortable coming to you because of that hierarchical understanding of education. Parental stresses. Many parents come with a lot of high qualifications. And when they come here, they realize that they're basically small fish in a big pond. And that is very, very dehumanizing sometimes, because you come here with your degrees and so on, and you saying, yeah, I'm going to get a job, and then you realize, well, I have to do some bagging of groceries at Kroger in order to pay the bills, and that can put a lot of stress in the home life, and, having to fight against this kind of thing where you want to be recognized, you want to be treated as a professional, but because of how the systems are here, you have to basically start from zero and work yourself up. Mm-hmm. And that impacts really a lot on the kids' well-being and happiness sometimes in the home, and that can take an effect on their learning, being able to learn and being able to do what they can do in school. And parent-child role switching, because the children now who are here become the experts in the environment, they are the ones sometimes that have to take the parental role in the home. And that can bring its own set of stressors as well. So these are just some of the things that we want to bring out to be something that you can think of and be aware of as we move forward.
And that was kind of the stopping point. We wanted you to take a few minutes and think about all the things Rhonda has shared and all the things that we've experienced with our students. Some of these challenges, some of the cultural pieces. How can you be more intentional to help the kids adjust to the life and culture in the US? Do you know where to find these resources and to help the immigrant families transition and some of the challenges? Just as simple as, knowing, like with the free health clinics, or knowing lawyers in this that might be able to work with paperwork and figure out how they're doing. And then how can I sensitize my colleagues? Because obviously you guys are all here. Thank you for being here. How can you make your other colleagues and wider community aware and being open-minded and receptive to the other cultures, and making them feel welcomed and acknowledging their deep cultural background, like Rhonda said, with manners. And I make it a practice to tell everyone, like, manners matter, and make sure you're very, come in and say your good morning, and making sure that the other cultures are heard and felt. So just take a moment, and I just wanted you guys to think about how could you go tomorrow, go on Monday, and what are some things that maybe you can think differently about? And I know Michael in the chat, thank you, Michael, saying, just having that, what the ENL students bring is very valuable, and having that mindset, instead of looking at it from a deficit, like what don't they have? It's like, what do you have? Because they have a ton. My life is made richer from all my students and how they've enlightened me on so many things. One thing that Rhonda didn't mention that I wanted to point out is that we've really tried to help our students know about different vitamins to take, because with that weather and climate, what ends up happening is a lot of our students from sunnier places during these gray seasons here in Indiana, they don't know about vitamin D or vitamin C to help them stay healthy, and not, because when they miss a lot of school, then it's even a harder challenge and a little more stressful on them to get caught up on what they've missed. So just encouraging them with the knowing that, like, with less sunlight, you can feel like a seasonal depression or a little bit lower energy. And so there are things to help with that. That has been something that, or just eating oranges and, talking about different foods that they might be able to get some of these vitamins from to help them with the seasonal change. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know. We're gonna switch gears. We have a brain break. Rhonda came up with this. It's just kind of fun sometimes to listen to other languages, and as she called it, there's something about Mary. So we're just gonna take a little moment and play just a couple other languages in their song. Okay, now we'll try it in Hindi.
मेरी की भेड़ बर्फ सी सफेद थी और कभी मेरी का साथ नहीं छोड़ती थी। मेरी की एक छोटी भेड़, छोटी भेड़, छोटी भेड़, मेरी की एक छोटी भेड़, बर्फ सी गोरी वो। मेरी जहाँ भी जाती थी, जाती थी, जाती थी, मेरी जहाँ भी जाती थी, साथ रहती थी वो।
And we'll pick one more. Which one do you want to do?
Russian.
Russian. Here we go.
У Мэри маленький барашек жил, барашек жил, барашек жил. Маленький барашек был, с шерстью белой, как снег. Везде за Мэри он ходил, за ней ходил, везде ходил, куда ни шла, за нею вслед барашек белый шел.
This is an example of just a little way to show value to the kids' culture. And again, it might not be through Mary Had a Little Lamb, but just allowing them sometimes, like, to say words. I'll say, how do you say that in Japanese, and put it on the board? Or how do you say that in Chinese? Again, just making them a part of the classroom, making them a part, their culture, their language. And they love it when I try to say their language. Like, I have a kid who rarely speaks. He's a beginner. And anytime I try to speak, like with the Google Translate and how it gives you the phonetic speaking in Japanese, he just laughs and laughs at me. So just being open to trying their language, sharing their language. All of my students have had a chance to teach me their alphabet. And I think that goes a long way. Just acknowledging, again, that what they bring is an asset and makes your life richer. So those are all things that I've seen and Rhonda has seen to make kids feel included.
And ba is the same in all languages. The sheep, there's no translation for that. So just an FYI.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about, we're kind of shifting gears into the content. And I think I went one slide too far.
Right.
Oh, thank you, Michael. We have our email at the end. So
Yes,
I'll definitely make sure to get you guys our contact. Thank you. Problems that, like, if you notice, these are the 4 things we're going to hit. The relationships, those are critical to feel connected in content. How the material's presented, some of the vocabulary that we can use with technology, and the tests. Those typically are our 4 areas that the ENL students struggle in especially science, math. US history is really hard because, they're coming with little background on, the teacher assumes everyone knows who Abraham Lincoln is, or assumes that everyone has heard of the Constitution, or just certain words that teachers, they don't even realize that they take for granted that, oh, everyone knows this. And then our kids don't. Like I always say, like, if I was in Japan, I wouldn't necessarily know who the first leader was, what the first words were. So just allowing yourself to step in their situation. But anyway, here's some of our solutions. So just kind of a quick snapshot, and then I'll go through a little bit more detail. Again, building relationships. How do we get to know students? How do you adapt presentations and help other teachers adapt their presentations? What kind of technology tools are out there for teachers to utilize and help them bridge the gap between their kids? And what's a easy test format for ENL students depending on their level? So what we learned, the problem was a lot of ENL kids wanted to come to our room almost every class at some point. They would want to come because they felt comfortable, they felt understood, they felt safe. And so some of the solutions that we see for content teachers is to make sure they're, if their room is ENL friendly, then the kids like staying there. Definitely know the kid's name, and don't be afraid to ask them a couple times or have them do a voice memo to pronounce it correctly, and know which country they're from. I've had a teacher before say, oh, this kid, I gave him a Spanish book, and I'm like, oh, he doesn't speak Spanish, he speaks Hindi. So making sure where are they from, what language they speak, goes a long way to help build that relationship. And knowing their levels. Take time to know what is their reading level, what is their writing level. And like I said earlier, the input part is easier. The listening and reading are typically higher. The speaking and writing come later. That's just language development. And know them a little differently than just your math or your science classroom. Like, what are they interested in? Do they like baseball? Do they like cricket? Do they like, just know a little bit about them. Did they celebrate Diwali this week? Goes a long way to making that kid feel seen and heard in your classroom. I love this shot. Rhonda put this together for us. I'm kind of like the big idea person, and she gets it done. But so you can see where our kids are from. So she's printed out pictures of the students, and then we attached it to their country of origin, so that you can kind of see our class is typically balanced between the Western and Eastern hemisphere. So like we said, that was kind of the challenge we had, is making sure we acknowledge all cultural comforts and how to push them, but also not allow anybody to overtake the space. So, and I shared with you earlier, some of the problems we saw with were students failing WIDA just to stay in their comfort zone. Because again, the accommodations made their life easier here at the high school, and we saw it kind of becoming a learned helplessness and a lack of motivation to be independent. So we've really kind of fine-tuned that in the last few years about how to push them and what language to use to like have them excel, like we shared about getting them into the advanced placement classes. And so some of our solutions is just like this is the good, because sometimes it's language, sometimes it's a learning disability, and sometimes those are hard to differentiate depending on the level of language. So really spending time and trying to talk through solutions. So we've had a couple kids who we thought it was language, but it ended up being a special ed or motivation thing. So just trying to help differentiate that. Again, that goes with relationship building. And then trying to push those kids to those regular class. And that's where I said I get out more as a co-teacher. And even like on my prep period, sometimes I'll take time just to run into other classes and make the kids seen and like they know that I'm there to support them in the regular classes. So again, with the co-teaching, and make sure we communicating with the parents. That's critical to the success of our students, especially those who want to try to like learn helplessness. Like that, once you get the parents involved and tell them what you're doing, the parents are our best asset. That we're realizing that they too want the best for their student, and they want the best for their kid, and they help us push them to be the best that they can be.
So we'll just look at the profile of one of our teachers here who has been very successful with our kids. Her name is Amanda Cole, and she teaches science and algebra. She knows everyone's name. She chats with them in the hallways, celebrates their growth and accomplishments, encourages them to access her at any time. And she's very approachable. They feel comfortable going to her with their questions. They don't feel silly asking, what they may think is a silly questions. So this is something that we have applauded, try to encourage our teachers who may not be totally on board with getting to know our students, but it does work and it makes your life as a teacher a lot easier, because when you build that relationship, I mean, the sky is the limit. You can get students to do anything that you want them to do.
Mm-hmm. And so a side note, we did end up taking kind of like some celebrations and pointing out, we give a newsletter, our school does monthly or weekly. And so sometimes we'll profile a teacher in there and just share a strategy that they're doing to again, encourage the teacher that we notice what you're doing. We're thankful for what you're doing. And that seems to spread to other teachers in that department. So taking the time to thank the teacher when they're doing something well really has gone a long way in helping their other teachers around them, their colleagues. The second thing we wanted to touch on with like just the content area was presentations. How do teachers make those understandable? Visuals, lots and lots of visuals. That really helps a kid who's trying to learn the language. If it's all words, then it's really hard for them to capture maybe what's going on. And even sometimes printing out the PowerPoint, the presentation early, so our kids can just listen, because again, listening is typically a skill that they do better. And if they're trying to multitask by like listening and writing and trying to figure out what the blank is, they might miss the whole point of what you were trying to get across to them. So I'd say the beginning levels, definitely make sure you give them access to that presentation so they can just sit and listen. Model the procedures, show examples. So if you want them to do something, it's really helpful to have an example of what that end product's going to look like, so that they know, again, a visual, they can see what you're trying to get them to produce. And act out. That's what Amanda Cole, she, if they're doing like, you're going like the slope goes this direction or negative, and just using gestures to help go along with the words you're using. Talk slowly. And as Rhonda mentioned, sometimes our accent can be a hindrance. So using simplified language, saying things and acknowledging that sometimes you might use some phrases or things that the students might not understand or might not translate well. So being cognitive of trying to make it as plain and simple as possible. And adding those closed caption to the videos, that's huge. If you're going to show them a video, please add that closed caption. And if you're going to show them, I've had teachers show videos, don't make them do a worksheet along with it. Like, maybe have them write a couple main ideas at the end of the video, just to allow them to hear the language and see the language. Because we challenged our teachers, hey, go ahead and try to watch a show like on Netflix, or watch a movie completely in Hindi, and tell me, how do you feel at the end? How does your brain feel? Like, are you tired? Again, our kids have been listening to English all day long. And so sometimes they need that brain break also, that we gave you guys. And just give them that time to process. That's really helpful. Here are some technology tools that we have just found help content teachers and help our students. Obviously, Google Translate, it's not perfect, but it usually gets the point across. And we even use Google Translate when we're sending emails to the parents. So we'll put it in English, and then we also include their first language. Rhonda works a lot with the Microsoft Office and how, you can translate easily on there and allow the student to see it in their L1. Because again, deeper thinking happens in their L1, and that helps them produce the L2, the second language, and give them time to use that vocabulary. Again, as teachers, sometimes the wait time feels weird, but that's the critical piece for our ENL kids to make it applicable to them and that they understand it deeper. If there's a ton of things like on tests, or highlight those words, just let them focus on the main thing you're trying to get acclimated to or try to learn. And don't overuse technology though. So make sure that it's a great resource, but nothing beats the personal building relationship, going back to that first piece. So coursework design, something we notice is that sometimes teachers, remember your student has lots of courses they're taking. And so something that you think, oh, it only takes 20 minutes, that might take them 40 minutes, 50 minutes for just your class. And then that goes into all the other classes too. So modifying is really critical, not just giving them extended time, but modifying. Like if you're giving a 3-paragraph essay, having our students, the ENL students, do 1 paragraph, just that makes their life simpler. And again, like Rhonda shared, they're going through so much, just acclimating to the culture and their parents and all this stuff. Being aware that just even taking out, like if you have 50 questions, do the evens, do the odds. That's just simple ways to make their course load, like they're still showing you that they're learning something, but you're allowing them time to do their other classes too. And on tests, what we notice is, again, eliminate some choices if they're beginning and shorten the problems. I know we're getting ready to end. So I just wanted to, let me go to our information. So if you guys have other questions, here's our emails. Feel free, screenshot it, write it down, contact us. We thank you for your time. Let us know if you need anything else.
It was a pleasure. Have a great Saturday.